Hi folks, Chris VK3AML again, and hopefully this week we'll have a little bit better connection. I've taken the trouble to make a few adjustments on the OBS streaming software, and hopefully that'll give a bit more latency and a bit less dropout on the system that we've got going here. I'll just check that I've got some sort of streaming. Looks like we have. Nobody viewing as yet, but no doubt they will be on the recording. It's 9:29 p.m. An explanation here as always. We transmit through that transmitter over there, and this is a sort of a think piece, 90 minutes worth of pre-recorded material to precede a discussion on the air, which I hope to be able to stream on this YouTube live stream, which hasn't behaved itself the last few weeks, but so far so good. Okay, 9:29 p.m. On with the headphones, and in a moment I'll hit the transmit switch. And it's 9:30. Hello, this is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima with the usual Saturday night transmission. This was started as a tradition by VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, my predecessor Tony Sanderson, who had the call sign from 1966 at Elstonwick until 1980, and then at Surrey Hills until his death in 2006 when I picked up the call sign. This is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima testing, the regular Saturday night test. We're also streaming on YouTube live stream, and to find that, please Google VK3AML 18 September 2021. That is, simply Google the phrase VK3AML 18 September 2021, and you should find the visuals that go with this. Tonight I've thrown together some video that I shot in 2019 with Mike VK7MJ when we were both touring New Zealand. We got down to Dunedin, attended a meeting of the Octagon branch of the NZART, and subsequently were invited to the shack of two local ham radio operators, Peter Johnson, ZL4LV, who is the retired chief engineer, as I understand it, of the local television station for Dunedin, and Ron Falconer, ZL4RMF, a fairly renowned DXer, heard often in Australia on 40, 20 and 80 metres. Ron has an all-digital shack, software-defined radio, Flex Radio, which was the first fully software-defined shack that I'd ever encountered. So I made a video of Ron explaining its operation, which hopefully you'll see as the night progresses. After that, the life of somebody who has just electronics community, and that is Sir Clive Sinclair. Clive Sinclair, well known in the early days of transistorized equipment particularly, and as a pioneer of personal computing. My first contact with Clive Sinclair came through the pages of Electronics Australia back in about start of 1966, I think it was, when either ham radio suppliers in Melbourne or Homecrafts, which then dealt with electronics, started syndicating Sinclair's products, including a very interesting audio amplifier in kit form called the X10, and it was a pulse width modulated audio output device capable of delivering 10 watts and a very high efficiency compared to most Class A complementary symmetry output stage transistorized amplifiers of the mid-60s, in that it worked on chopping pulse width modulated waveforms and then filtering them out to provide the final output in a loudspeaker. Unfortunately, with the hardware of that time, the switching times of transistors in the mid-60s was fairly poor and fairly slow. As a consequence, the amplifiers were not quite as efficient as they might have been in Class D, as we call it now. And higher frequencies, up around 8 or 10 kilohertz, fed into these devices produced aliasing noises and mixing products with the switching mode frequency of the output stage. So not a perfect product, but certainly an interesting one for the time. Well, with the time at 9:35, I'll now go over to video that Mike VK3AML and I made as we entered Dunedin. I'd never been there before. You'll be seeing it as I saw it going down the main street for the very first time, along with the rather eccentric guest house that Mike and I had rooms in, called the Sahara. Any place less like the Sahara, either in the place, the accommodation house, or in Dunedin itself, you cannot imagine. As you'll see, Dunedin is a university town. It mostly exists to service the University of Otago, one of the oldest New Zealand universities, and Dunedin was built basically on a gold rush in the 19th century, late 19th century, and had a population of about 80,000 in 1900 and hasn't grown much. So the architecture of the place, compared to most of New Zealand, is very Victorian era. Victorian and what we'd call Federation houses. So, back to 2019 hopefully, and I see we've got no lost frames so far, so the streaming is going extremely well. Again, if you want to look in on this, please Google VK3AML 18 September 2021. So now, ham radio in Dunedin, New Zealand, filmed in February 2019. This is a commemorative shot. This is the furthest south I've ever been, as of here, where I think a little bit south of Lumsden, which is my previous furthest south. We're just north of Dunedin, about to come into the orbit of Dunedin. Going over the saddle. Apologies for the audio, it does improve.
On the northern motorway.
To the west of Mount Cargill.
So this is basically becomes the main street of Dunedin.
Right.
As you see, it sort of runs straight into the hill. Modelled on the city of Edinburgh.
Good heavens, look at that architecture.
Yeah, it's all modelled on the city of Edinburgh.
Very 19th century.
Oh yes. Well, its population was about 85,000 in 1900. It's only 120,000 now. When the gold ended, the population basically, if it wasn't a university, there'd be nothing here. It was also the second place in the world to have cable trams, as you can see by the streets.
Yes.
Further down here with this tall tower is Knox Church.
Yeah.
And there used to be a cable tram ran up there. Now I'm not sure, it's only 550 metres and it's on the right, I think. No, Knox Church down, we can see that tower poking up the tree. And there's a steep street and the cable trams used to get up, and the university and the students from the Knox College used to hang out one side of the tram and try and jam the cable grip into the track.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that isn't. It's not Knox Church. I think it's Knox. I'm not sure that's Knox Church or not.
What's the name of our abode during this trip?
It's the Safari Roadhouse, and it's 130 metres according to me, eh?
Sahara on the
Oh
right.
yes,
the
on the
green
right.
one.
Okay, well I'm just moving over to the left because there's a car right behind me, and I've got to.
That's our destination.
That is.
This is my room in the Dunedin guest house, and apologies for the pixelation. I have had to squeeze down the bandwidth this week. Current bitrate 180 kilobytes per second. This is a Sahara-style sandblasted glass window in the hotel, and that's the rather historic switchboard in the hotel. The Sahara Guest House, George Street, Dunedin. A bit like Faulty Towers, except without the neurotic man at the front desk.
In fact, I think the street names are even borrowed from the map of Edinburgh, the new town of Edinburgh.
Walking down George Street towards the city of Dunedin. Very English. Including holly hedges and Federation architecture, at least we would call it Federation architecture.
I think it's the
student housing.
The learning left, you know, the radical socialist universities.
And some with rather distasteful titles. Rod and gun in any other part of the world would be a hunting shop. Here it's gentleman's apparel. And this is the only place I've heard the bog named after a hotel. On our way into the centre of Dunedin, the Octagon. It's a city of churches, much like Adelaide in that respect. This is the centre of Dunedin. It's called the Octagon. Town Hall on the right. This was, I think, a Saturday morning, so there was a market being set up, which you'll see in a moment. Those blue tents on the left. This is VK3AML testing. And this is the centre of Dunedin now. I remember buying a woolen hat for my explorations of Stewart Island at that stall. Down a road to the east of the town, that distant tower down the end of the road there is Dunedin's railway station. These days there's only a tourist railway, unfortunately. Magnificent building, I think dating from the turn of last century. Dunedin's actually effectively about 300 kilometres south of Hobart, so it's at, let me see here, what's the latitude I've noted? It's at latitude 46 south. Hobart's latitude 42 south, we're latitude 38 south, so Dunedin, even in summer, can be fairly chilly. Robert Burns' statue right in the middle of Dunedin. An area settled by Scottish settlers predominantly, people that were used to low temperatures. Some of the architecture of the place. And the main reason for Dunedin being there is the university, a very extensive university with a large medical faculty. Mike 7MJ actually did his PhD thesis here in the 1970s, a thesis on radio astronomy in the Department of Physics there.
This one, a little arrow pointing my shack.
Mike was pointing out where his office was in the old days in that building. Up on that hill is Mount Cargill, and that's the location of Dunedin's television station, which naturally we went to have a look at. To hold the camera steady on the Mount Cargill road.
Look at all the gorse. Oh, he'd love it. Let's see if we're placed to park a car. That's one place, obviously. Looks like a parking spot there.
Don't go too far.
Now I scratched the gorse on the paintwork on the gorse.
Otago Harbour and Dunedin from Mount Cargill. It's an absolutely delightful part of the world. On the left. Coming round to the centre of town. City of 129,000. There's central Dunedin. And looking away to the south now. That's as far south as I have ever seen, 45 degrees. We were heading further that trip. Central Dunedin there, and the head of Otago Harbour on the left. This is VK3AML. If you care to look in on our YouTube live stream, you will see what I'm talking about. Mount Cargill television station.
Loses its focus when you get up and can't find the relevant things to focus.
The tower. And there's Mike coming towards the coast north of Dunedin. Pacific Ocean on the right. And the road we came in on the left. It's a major highway for New Zealand. The roads are not very wide, there are very few multi-lane highways, but people are very courteous on the road, we found. Looking north from Mount Cargill. And the television transmitter building. Mike shooting some video of his old home. He had a home at Portobello on the Otago Peninsula, which you can see distantly on the other side of Otago Harbour through the legs of that television tower. A very pretty part of the world, not unlike Tasmania.
Everything's in English and Maori.
The summit marker on Mount Cargill. And this is where the satellite connection with the rest of the world comes in, which the television tower then puts out. Local sports centre. Telephoto from Mount Cargill. We got quite dusty on the road coming up, as you'll see. I wrote the word Cargill on the back of the car in the dust. Had to get that off before we returned the rental vehicle. Now, Swampy Summit, where Mike did his radio astronomy experiments. Mike was actually receiving signals from the planet Jupiter. Magnetic whistlers, he called them. Here are some New Zealanders, and now we go back to town.
I remember one day sitting here and watching a Maori riding about one of those 30cc motorbikes, and cheeks of his bum were almost dragging on the road. He was a big island bloke, he was enormous. On one of those tiny bicycles that almost disappeared up his backside.
And there are a couple of Maori blokes on bicycles.
Probably the most well-known building in the city. built out of granite and Oamaru sandstone. And so you'll notice the same sort of stone is used in the main registry building. At the
That's
university.
Dunedin railway station on the left. One of the largest buildings in town, actually.
We might need to wander down by foot to see a lot of Dunedin if you want to have a walk around.
That's Mike's voice, incidentally. Dunedin railway station, magnificent building.
And the chief post office is just up there.
The New Zealanders don't do things by halves, I must say.
Last year, that's right. We go.
And now we're on our way to the NZART meeting.
In the Cargill, Anderson's Bay, that's what we want. Anderson's Bay Road.
Anderson's Bay Road is where this meeting room is, the local equivalent of the WIA meeting room, ZL4AA. And the meetings are held in a bungalow out the back here. I only managed to get a brief shot of the NZART meeting, but we were greatly welcomed here and invited on the following day to visit two ham shacks, one ZL4RMF Ron and the other ZL4LV Peter. We visited Peter first, and this is Peter's home.
8 element 6 metre Yagi.
Hang on, so this up on top here,
Yes.
that's an 8 element 6 metre Yagi?
Yagi, yes.
And you pointed that towards Australia?
That is pointing towards Australia approximately, yes.
Yeah.
So what do you...
So, what are the antennas we're looking at there,
That
Pete?
aerial is a 5 element 6 metre beam, Yagi.
Yeah, that's up the top, is
And
it?
the upper one is a skeleton slot,
Yes.
which I redesigned, computer optimised from the original design.
Okay.
Giving that another 2 dB of gain out of it.
Okay, and you've got the feed there, I can see, coming down a bit.
The rotator at the bottom, the rotator is homemade from bits and pieces. The right angle drive from the motor is of an old tractor post hole borer.
Good heavens. That was the thing with the chains that I saw.
The part with the chain is purely the indicator unit.
Okay.
There's a mag slip and
Is with 2 metres above,
yes.
and what else have we got here?
The lithium one is 23 centimetre.
I'll just go for a zoom in on that. That's 23 centimetres.
The next one is 70 centimetre.
Yeah.
Well, it's a commercial one, but
Yep.
and this one over here is another 23 centimetre one. Yes.
Okay, that's the loop Yagi.
Yeah, loop Yagi, yes.
How many elements is that?
Oh gosh, I can't remember.
Looks like about 50 elements or something.
Yes, it's about 30 or 40, something like that, yes.
Yes.
It's quite a few. I didn't make it actually, but the locals made it.
Now, the antenna pointing straight up is moon bounce or something,
The moon bounce, yes, folded down.
which you can only see half of there.
And that looks like a 2 millimetre skeleton slot. Yes. And I noticed that the old LSGB used to have them just a triangle, but you've got a matching section there and changed that. That's right. Yeah, yes, a quarter-wave matching section. So get a bell on it at 200 ohms. Oh, okay.
Somewhere is an 80 metre dipole. These are examples of Peter's home construction. There's all sorts of beam antennas ready to be swung up into action at Peter's place. Peter ZL4LV on the right there. Peter Johnson. The open wire feeder for 160 metres starts here, goes right out. It's hard to tell where it goes.
Well down behind those trees.
Feed point there, and then out somewhere to...
Came off. Oh, okay.
Sorry about the flash zooms. And the Pacific Ocean to the...
Because you can let off a bomb, big explosive, and the wave just doesn't travel. It just...
In fact, it has an infrared lamp on it. The Otago branch project.
What I discovered is that when I first made it, I used to get all sorts of whistle about 3.6, and as soon as I filtered the 9 meg, the VFO,
Yes.
and I filtered the 9 meg signal, I was taking it straight off the emitter of the oscillator. As soon as I put it through a 9 meg tune, lo and behold, all the birdies disappeared.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
I've never been aware of that at all. It's the same pair of that as well.
Are you photographing, are you?
Yeah, Peter, for the sake of the video, could you describe what we've got here?
Oh, actually, this is up the top is a 6 metre linear amplifier modified from a TV sound transmitter.
Okay.
New Zealand was New Zealand Channel 2 originally, now shifting down the frequency a wee bit.
Yeah.
It was originally, of course, FM non-linear. This is now a linear amplifier. And how it is a home-made HF amplifier using the same valves and the same power supply.
Okay, mostly using for what, FT8 or SSB? Or?
Oh, as long as it'll be SSB or digital modes. It's designed so it can be remotely tuned, all the three elements.
Right.
So it's got motors, servo system to control the rotary inductor, the tuning capacitor and the loading capacitor.
Right.
Yeah, I can see the stepping motors on the knob there.
Yes. It's one of the unfinished jobs. But I make my own gear wheels.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That's been the hardest thing. I tried making a remote controlled aerial tuner, and the hardest thing was trying to make, I didn't make gear wheels, I ended up using, turning them out of, on a drill press out of particle board and plenty of shellac and rubber O-rings, but the biggest problem was I had it just right, but every time you press the transmit button, it tripped the thing and reset the switches.
Oh, yeah.
And parked the switch again.
Yes.
So I had a slight shielding problem.